King George V and the Ghost Ship. Throughout the long history of seafaring, many ships have been lost to storms while journeying to distant lands. Yet, some vessels seem unwilling to rest beneath the ocean's depths. They continue to haunt the seas with eerie persistence. The Crimson Glow. Countless sailors have sworn they've seen ghost ships with their own eyes. Among those witnesses was a figure of great renown, the Duke of York, the young man who would later become King George V of England. At the time, he was just 16 years old, traveling the world aboard the Bacchante as a midshipman in the British Royal Navy. On the night of July 11th, into the early hours of the 12th, 1881, while the ship was adrift off the coast of Australia, a sudden flash pierced the darkness. Within that beam of light, several crew members saw, just a few hundred meters away, a three-masted vessel enveloped in a faint crimson glow, silently crossing Bachante's path. The ship's masts and rigging stood out starkly under the strange, reflective light, casting an unshakable chill upon the witnesses.
Surrounded by a pale red glow, silently cutting across the path of the Bacchante. The ship's masts and rigging were clearly visible under the strange, reflective light.
Mysterious deaths. A naval lieutenant was immediately summoned to the deck to investigate the phenomenon, but before he could get a clear look, the ship had vanished into the night. Only the Duke of York and 12 members of the crew had witnessed the bizarre sight. The future King George V believed he had seen the legendary Flying Dutchman, though the ship's appearance didn't entirely match the famous tales. That very night, one of the sailors who had seen the ghost ship fell to his death from the mast under inexplicable circumstances. A few weeks later, the admiral of the fleet also passed away. Some believed these deaths were connected to the ghostly vision they had encountered. To this day, no rational explanation has ever been given for the strange events that unfolded aboard the Bacchante, selling one's soul to the devil. The legend of the ghost ship helmed by a Dutchman has existed since the 17th century, though its tale varies across different regions. In one version, the ship belonged to a Dutch captain named Barend Fokker. He lived in Amsterdam during the 1650s and was known for his fiery temper and love of drinking. Yet his ship was famous for being faster than any other. The voyage from Amsterdam to Batavia took him only 3 months, an incredible speed for the time. Many believed such speed could only be explained by the devil's aid. So when the ship vanished at sea, rumors quickly spread that it had been cursed, thus selling its soul to the devil. In another version, the ill-fated hero was Captain Van der Staten, who was punished by God for setting sail on Good Friday, a sacred day, a captain cursed for blasphemy. However, the most widely known version of the legend is the story of Captain Van der Decken. While sailing from the Netherlands to the East Indies, his ship was caught in a violent storm off the Cape of Good Hope. Overconfident in his seamanship, Van der Decken ignored his crew's desperate pleas and arrogantly dared the Almighty to sink his ship. Though he survived the storm, he was condemned to wander the seas for eternity, a punishment for blasphemy. The tale was passed down orally for centuries until it was immortalized by German poet Heinrich Heine in a work from 1830. In Heine's version, the cursed captain is ultimately freed from his eternal voyage when a young woman, moved by love, sacrifices herself in his place, so he may finally find peace. At last, his ship, its sails crimson red, is swallowed by the waves. Inspired by this story, composer Richard Wagner created the opera The Flying Dutchman in 1843. The Flying Dutchman appears. In 1887, while en route from San Francisco to China, the crew of the American ship Orion spotted an old sailing vessel, a three-masted ship, emerging from a strange beam of white light. The mysterious vessel drew close to the Orion for a moment, then suddenly vanished when the moonlight was obscured by clouds. Strangely, though the air was completely still, the ship's sails were fully billowed, as if filled with wind. In 1939, a similar ship was witnessed by hundreds of people standing on the South African coast. With its sails taut, It glided swiftly across the sea, even though there was no wind offshore at the time. Yet in an instant, the ship disappeared without a trace. The three-masted ghost ship appeared once more in 1942, near Mule Point, as it sailed toward Table Bay in its distinctly antique form. Since then, sightings have become increasingly rare. It seems that modern ships have not only overtaken the seas, but also stripped the oceans of some of their old romantic mystery.